Hello and welcome to the 16th episode of When I Was Your Age. I'm your host, Roland Parker, coming to you from a bounce back week in fantasy football. And as always, it is a joy, pleasure, and a treat to have you here. Today's guest is Kaitlin Hogan. I'm really excited to catch up with her, learn a little bit about what she's been into with coaching and teaching. But before we get into that, a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that you follow us on Instagram, WIWYA pod. Thank you so much for the support. I like to give an update each episode with where we stand follower wise, and we are currently at 730 followers. Big thank you to everybody supporting us that way. Without further ado, I think we'll go ahead and bring Kaitlin in. Kaitlin, how's it going? What have you been up to?
Going good. Nothing much, just coaching, teaching. Really, my whole life is just kind of in that right now.
Nice, good deal. Any fun like weekend plans or anything like that?
Gosh, I wish I did because we have school off tomorrow. So I think the whole weekend's actually going to be about getting rest because our volleyball season just ended, and so I'm excited to just like have nothing to do and just kind of sit, watch TV.
Nice.
I've like been into rewatching Gilmore Girls, so I think I'll probably do that all weekend.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So that was actually a big point of discussion for Caroline Hardy's episode. We are a Gilmore Girls household. I was not really like into Gilmore Girls until I met my wife, and we would watch it a bunch in college. And it is obviously every fall. It's Gilmore Girls season.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Who as a character do you connect with the most?
Oh gosh, who do I connect with? I don't really know if I connect with any of them, but I love Lorelai.
Sure.
And Lorelai reminds me of one of my best friends. I actually texted her maybe 2 days ago and I was like, "Do you watch Gilmore Girls?" And she was like, "Do I watch it? Like I live it." And I was like, "Well, you remind me of Lorelai." And so we talked about that for a little bit because my best friend is just so like outgoing and does those like corny jokes along the same lines as Lorelai.
I love that. It's funny too because we talked about Caroline and I that they're like everybody kind of like messes up like a good deal. Like it's hard to like root for everybody. At least at one point they're kind of like being a little boneheaded. I don't know. I like Suki a lot. I feel like
I love
it's a
Suki.
pretty level headed. Not a whole lot of like reasons to root against her or anything like that. Mostly just want to see her succeed. That's kind of it for me. I don't know if I relate to her per se, but I like that's the character I kind of like the best, I would think.
One person I really like is Paris. Like that's probably like an unpopular opinion, but I think Paris is hilarious. Like I watch her and I like crack up the whole time.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I didn't like notice this line before, but she totally is like one of the characters that makes me laugh the most. But she was like in like the newsroom, like talking to like all of the people about like their deadlines and stuff. And she's like, if you can't deal with it, find a ledge or deal with it. It was so ridiculous.
She's awesome.
But
She's so funny.
so funny. That actress is in How to Get Away with Murder too.
Yes. And I didn't realize that. And so I watched Gilmore Girls, I think like early on in college. And then I watched How to Get Away with Murder later in college. And then when I rewatched Gilmore Girls, I was like, Paris looks so familiar. And it took me a full day to figure out. And when I like put two and two together, my mind was blown.
Yeah, 100%. Completely different tonally, those two shows, but still good. Yeah, I forget the actress's name, but yeah, good stuff. All right, well, if you are not currently, make sure that you follow Kaitlin on Instagram if you want to keep up with her coaching wise. Area champs here recently. Well, I'm excited to talk about that a little bit more later. But we're going to get into some get to know you questions. We like to ask these each week. So we'll get started. So where are you from and where do you currently live?
So from Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm still in Birmingham. Never left, born and raised, staying here.
Nice. Very, very cool. And so you also went to Birmingham Southern, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm trying to remember if I've made this up in my mind or not, but did you ever play in a basketball game against Maryville College?
Yes. Yes, we did when I was a freshman. We
Okay.
played against Maryville in, I want to say it was the NCAA tournament when we played Maryville.
Yes. Okay. That's funny because I remember looking across the way and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Kaitlin, like on the bench.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
There were so many people there, and I was like so like struck. I was like, I'm in the NCAA tournament. There are tons of people here, and this team is really really good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool.
But
It's like, well, shout out to the Panthers. Shout out to the Scots. There was some like sports account that like posted the like the best game day site
mhm.
in each state, and it posted Maryville College as like the one for Tennessee
Oh,
recently.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know why. I was pretty happy about it.
That's
But
really
yeah,
cool.
no, it was pretty sick. Well, nice. So, what is it that you do?
So I am an anatomy and physiology teacher at the high school I work at. So I work at Mortimer Jordan, and I have to say that slow because everyone thinks I say Murtimer, but it's Mortimer Jordan. And so for the people that don't know where that is, that's about 15 minutes north of Gardendale. And I have 12th and 11th graders, and then I'm also the head varsity volleyball coach for our school.
Nice, excellent. That is awesome. So a big piece of the podcast for us is, when I was your age, that kind of thinking in tune with people that are around this, um, stage of life, and
Mhm.
doing impressive things in it. So, how old are you?
26.
Nice. Very good. And what piece of media are you currently enjoying? Be that book, podcast, music, TV? We've already touched on it with Gilmore
Mhm.
Girls, but is there anything aside from Gilmore Girls that you're diving into right now?
So I'm a big TV girl, but when I drive, so my drive is 35 minutes to school and 35 minutes back. And I'm typically always listening to some podcast on that drive.
Nice. Okay. It's any podcast in particular?
So I don't know if you know who David Dobrik is. Do you know who that
Hmm.
is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so he has two friends, Heath and Zane. And then he also has Mariah and Matt
Hmm.
that were a part of his friend group, and they have a podcast called Unfiltered. And I've been listening to that every single Monday morning for probably the past, I think, 3 years, maybe 2.5. And it's probably been my favorite podcast because it makes me feel like I'm sitting in the car with my friends and I'm listening to like just one of our kind of conversations.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you have to be really, really listening. It's just kind of one of those podcasts that you can sit to and listen. It's really nice. It just like feels like you're just hanging out with friends.
Yeah. 100%.
And then I have one more. So it's funny because I was telling my teacher friends how I have like a really strict routine about my drives and like what I'm going to listen to on the weekdays. So that's my Monday morning, and then my Wednesday morning it's consumed with Survivor's podcast. So do you watch Survivor on CBS?
I don't. I've never been a big Survivor guy, but like, so I'm assuming it's like a follow-up podcast debriefs like from the episodes. Yeah.
Yes, and I tune in every Wednesday morning or every Thursday morning actually because I watch the show Wednesday night, and so Thursday morning I'm listening to it.
Nice. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I was big on that for when House of the Dragon was running. I would go
Oh,
immediately to like whenever I finished watching the episode, then I was like listening to the podcast, like the follow-up podcast with like the supporting materials and stuff.
yes, it's so good.
So yeah, that there's nothing quite like listening to like the follow-up like supplemental materials,
Yes.
and like going through theories and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that sounds really good. Also, the other podcast you were talking, I remember like watching Zane and Heath on Vine. So
I love them.
there's something to be said too about like rediscovering some of these like Vine personalities
Mm-hmm.
as like YouTubers or podcast people and stuff like that. My wife she listens to The Toast a lot, and it's kind of put
Mm-hmm.
me on to um the Josh Peck and Ben
Oh
Soffer,
yeah.
Good Guys. That's a good one. That one's
Mm-hmm.
pretty
I
funny.
need to
That one
check that one out.
that one is it's kind of similar in that it's like very like conversational and stuff. We listened to like a John Stamos episode that was on
Yeah.
there. Apparently, he and Josh Peck are really good friends. So no, it's good. It's a good listen. I like podcasts like you're talking about where you feel like you're a part of the conversation, like
Yes.
offering up answers like to some of the questions and hypotheticals. Totally feel that.
I love it.
Let's see. What is something that you'd consider a luxurious necessity?
Oh gosh,
So what I
luxurious
always kind
necessity.
of preface with this question is that for me, I say like a nice cup of coffee. Like we make espresso every morning and make like a nice latte. And like I know that that's big for some people, but like anything, it could be like work related, could be like I don't know, just anything that kind of elevates your experience. You don't really need it, but you like it's kind of wound into like your everyday routine. Is there something like that?
Mhm. Okay, so this is something that I just added to our volleyball program. So when we went to the Stanford volleyball camp over the summer, they had a whiteboard. And this is something that I've wanted for a while because I know that at Birmingham Southern, the volleyball team uses a whiteboard. And there are a lot of other programs that use one, and I've never had one. And so that's something that I bought this year. And so, like, as soon as I get down to practice, I put our entire practice plan on the whiteboard, and that's made like such a huge difference at like transitioning from one drill to the other. I put our quotes of the day on the board. And so I would say that's like my luxurious necessity right now.
Nice. I could totally see that. What it makes me kind of I used to like swim
Mm-hmm.
competitively, and I remember seeing like all of the sets written out of like we're doing this many 50-yard like swims, and it's like it's this stroke and we're doing it this many
Mm-hmm.
times, and here's your split you need to go on. I can imagine that like this drill, like we're moving on to this thing
Mm-hmm.
after that. Yeah, I could totally see that. That's a great choice.
That's
So
awesome. I think the
I
girls like it too.
yeah, 100%.
As soon as I finish writing it, they swarm the board and they're like looking at everything and like you can see because sometimes we do drills that like aren't their favorite and I can see
Mm,
their eyes get like this and they're like looking at each other like, oh God.
yeah,
But I like
that's
having it
funny.
all there for them to see.
Yeah, it's like, all right, what do we got cooked up for today? Like, oh, we've
Yep.
got insert volleyball drill.
Yep.
No, I love that. No, that's funny. Do you have any bits that you're doing? That my my oldest lately, she learned to say ew, and she should and like any kind of like touchy thing, like even if it's like something that doesn't really bother her, she'll just be like ew, and it's very funny the way that she says it. That's her bit that she's kind of
Mhm.
latched onto lately. But any bits that you're doing?
Okay, so I've been thinking about this ever since you asked me to be on the podcast because I watched your videos and I was like, he's gonna ask me what my bid is and I can't just not have an answer.
Love it.
And so I even like texted my friends. I was like, guys, I have no idea what my bid's gonna be. And so I was thinking about it more and more. And I think I have two, one for in the classroom and then one with my friends. And so currently in the classroom, no matter what we do, we could color, we could watch a video, we could do notes, whatever it is that I give my students to do, they are always like, oh my gosh, and like complaining. And I go, I know it's just so crazy that a teacher would have to give you work today. Like, I don't understand. Like, why
Mhm.
would they do this to y'all?
That's
And
good.
so I give them some grief that way. And so I do that a lot with them. And then with my friends, something that we do, and so I'm on an adult volleyball team with my friends. And like, if somebody messes up, like let's say they miss a serve, we'll be like, oh my God, it's so okay. Don't do it again though. And so
Mhm.
like it's like we
Okay.
kind of like jab at each other a little bit. Or they'll like ask for something, they'll be like, no. And then we'll just immediately do it for them.
Mhm.
We just like to be like
I like it.
kind of like butts to each other, but it's
It's a
fun.
I think one of the more important aspects of a bit is the delivery.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
the sarcasm component with the students, I think is
Mhm.
that's what makes it. And then like the deadpan of like
Yeah.
no, and then following up.
Exactly.
It's having those juxtaposing. That's funny. I can totally see that. All right, next question. Given the opportunity to replace the national anthem with any song on your
Oh,
playlist, what would that be? Tell me a little bit about that. Go as serious or
okay.
as silly as you like. I'd love to hear reasoning if you got some. Um, but yeah, I like asking this question
Mhm.
a lot, hearing the lines of thinking too.
That's a good one. Okay, so recently I'm between two, either something by Brooke and the Bluff, who I love, or something by Taylor Swift.
Okay.
And I just recently became a Swiftie. Like growing up, never listened,
Not so
was
much.
never really into it until this past summer when she did the Eras tour. And I was like, maybe I'll figure out what all the hype is about. And
Hmm.
so now I'm like a full blown Swiftie. I have a Taylor Swift t shirt. Like I'm really considering driving to Indianapolis in 2024 just to see if I can get tickets to her show.
Hmm.
So if I choose Taylor Swift song, I would choose um something off folklore. What would I choose? Ooh, let me look real quick. My phone's right here, and I
Let's
have
see
her
it.
album literally like pulled up. Like
It's
literally,
already queued up. It's already
literally.
ready to
Like
go.
I would do My Tears Ricochet by Taylor Swift just because whenever I get in the car, that's probably the first song that I'm gonna choose if I have to listen to music and not a podcast.
Nice. I dig it. Folklore. I didn't listen to folklore like a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm.
What's the is it? There's a Bon Iver song
Yes,
on there.
Exile,
That
so
one's really
good.
good. Um I'm not sure why that there was a whenever that kind of came out. I was doing a lot of like early morning or late night driving. So there we would
Mm-hmm.
be with I still lived in Maryville at the time, and I would just be like whenever it would come on like
Mm-hmm.
in the shuffle or listening through the album, I was like passing like this like specific like part on the road. um yeah, what I can't think of like where I would have been, but like I associate like 321 like driving it
Mm-hmm.
with that time. But really good song.
Oh yeah,
I'm
so
into it.
good.
But you said My Tears Ricochet.
Yes.
Nice. Gonna save that. So if you if you don't know, we have compiled all of the answers into a playlist on
Okay.
Spot that you can follow on Spotify. If you're an Apple Music user, so sorry. But you could go in and make updates yourself. And if
Oh, that's
somebody out there
awesome.
has made an Apple Podcast or Apple Music playlist of it, then I'd be happy to link it. But yeah, I like compiling all the answers, and I'm
Mhm.
sure that uh, it'll be a good listen with a variety of sources there. But I love
Yeah, I'll
that.
have to check it out and see what people chose.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, let's see. Last question for the get to know you portion is, how do we know each other?
High school. We both went to high school together at Vestavia Hills.
That's right.
Go Rebels.
Go Rebels, 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 go go go. Love that. Yeah. So that's obviously that's been a big part of this podcast experience, is getting to reconnect with some people from college and some people from high school. It's kind of skewing more towards high school
Mhm.
for the guests in that respect for me. But that's what's great too, is that I get to see a wide variety of fields and expertises and stuff like that. So let's get into your story. When did you first connect with basketball, and when did you first connect with volleyball? Because that was something that I always kind of remembered, is that you
Mhm.
would play both. Um, and even kind of getting further along, was it when people are kind of expected to choose one and specialize? You
Mhm.
stayed connected with both. So tell me, do you have memories of when you first felt like a connection to both sports?
So I started playing basketball, honestly, probably like as soon as I could walk. That was one of the first sports that I started and fell in love with and just wanted to do continuously. And then volleyball was kind of a different case. Growing up, there weren't many opportunities, I would say, and I think that it's gotten a lot better recently. But growing up, there weren't tons of opportunities to be exposed to volleyball. And so my first time playing it was when I tried out for the seventh grade team at Pizzit as a sixth grader. And so, you know, I've always, and then after that, I just kept with it. Like I loved competing. I love sports where it's a team aspect. And so, stuck with it, all the way up until graduating high school. And then that's kind of when, or somewhere between senior year, I decided that I wanted to continue basketball further, which was a really hard decision, honestly. And sometimes I wonder, like, oh, was this the right decision? But it definitely was.
Nice. Good deal. So then you'd been playing basketball for, as long as you can kind of remember. Was there like a family connection to the sport too? Like I
Mhm.
feel like I remember your sister playing um what one sport or both too. So like was it important for your family?
So going off of Jenna, so that's my sister. She actually, well, she played a little basketball growing up, but her sport was volleyball. Now my parents, so my mom and my dad both played basketball in high school, and then so did my aunt. And so I would really say like someone that I looked up to a ton with playing basketball was my aunt. So she went to Barry, which is the old Hoover High School, and she ended up being the Gatorade Player of the Year for basketball, and then ended up going to UAB to play. And so she's someone like if I wanted to go get extra shots in, I was going with her, up to Hoover High School when she was helping coach basketball then, when she had like 7 D1 athletes on the varsity team. And like I was like starstruck by her and her team that she helped coach. And then, my parents, they're my heroes, and I've always looked up to them and their fame of athletics.
Uh, I love that. I think that people who have had maybe like a lifelong connection to sports, like you can't go like that time without at least sharing some of that connection like with your family, because they're taking you to tournaments and they're like,
Hmm.
helping you out with spirit
Oh
packs
my
and like
gosh.
raising money and like stuff like that. So I just wanted to get in your head about that a little bit. But
Yeah, that's one thing I've realized, like being a coach, is how much my parent and just getting older. And I think that's one of those hindsight things that you get when you get older is like how much your parents truly sacrifice for you. And so like not only was I playing school volleyball and school basketball, I played both of those in travel sports. And so
mhm.
like and then so my sister was also playing school volleyball and travel volleyball. And so, the sacrifice that your parents do for you to like have those opportunities, like I said, it's hindsight, but like I'm like every time I see them, I feel like I always want to say thank you for that.
Mhm.
So I'm like extremely grateful for them for being able to let me do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Tabby and I recently watched the David Beckham documentary on
Hmm.
Netflix, and uh, one of the bigger pieces that they highlight in like the first like couple episodes is the importance that and like the role that his dad played in like helping like foster the love of the sport like from a young age and stuff. And I think that
Hmm.
you see that in so many like great athletes and people who have been connected to a sport for a long time, is that they shared it with someone or it was like shown to them in some way.
Hmm.
But yeah, I love that. So uh, you've been playing the sports for a long time, basketball a little bit longer so,
Hmm.
but when did you first realize that you had some talent?
Oh gosh. Um, I think something that helped my confidence a lot when I was in high school about thinking maybe I like am decent at this and I could pursue this later on is that when I was a sophomore or going into my sophomore year, Coach Casey, who was the basketball coach at the time at Vestavia, she had pulled me up to the varsity team. And I feel like you see this more and more common, but back then, at least at Vestavia, it wasn't common. I feel like for younger athletes to get pulled up to the varsity level. And so doing that, and I had her and some other coaches who really instilled me with some confidence of like, hey, you're good at this and you can pursue this. And so I think a lot of that came from people helping me realize that I had some potential to keep going forward.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So like having it identified and like scoped out by
Mhm.
some people with credibility, coaches and stuff like that. Yeah. Caroline Hardy identified that that was an experience for her as well. That's always something that kind of struck me whenever like like I ran track
Mhm.
and cross country. I was not very good, but I enjoyed it, and
Mhm.
but I loved getting to see like all of the really good athletes that I was around, and seeing people who were called up to go run for the high school or go
Mhm.
play for the high school like in middle school. I was like so floored by that people that because it was kind of a really rare
Mhm.
thing. Like I remember being like a sophomore, and so they like brought up like some seventh and eighth grade girls to get to
Yeah.
run some event, and maybe it was cross country, and I was like, dang, that these guys are they're really
Yeah,
killing it. And obviously they turned out to be pretty stellar runners. But yeah, that's got to be a really like validating experience, I'm sure. Um,
100%.
so you teach anatomy and physiology. It's
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does teaching impact your coaching perspective? Like, are there things that you've like taken and applied for that? And then I'd also kind of like flip it, do the vice versa,
Mhm.
the inverse of that.
So something that was my goal this year for our volleyball season was, regardless of how our record turns out, I want every single girl that enters this program and leaves to know more about this game. And so I really took the time to kind of show them how I'm seeing things. Like, if I tell you to do something, there's a reason and there's a strategy behind it, and I want you to know that strategy. And so, really putting more of that teaching aspect into the game at practice, whether it's, we're doing this drill, let me show you what I'm seeing and why this is the correct way to do it. And then, if we're watching film, I'm going to break it down and show them my entire thought process,
Mm-hmm.
because I really want them to grow that volleyball IQ. And then ways that coaching has entered kind of my classroom is, you know, I think everyone holds high standards for their students, but I think coaches may hold higher standards for their athletes. And so in my classroom, I have really, really high standards for my students. Like, you're going to come in here and you're going to do work and you're going to do it this way, because this is what you're supposed to do. And so, and I can be a little hard on them, and but you always come back, and when you are hard on them, you come back with some love. And so I've had coaching enter my teaching life, and I've had my teaching life enter my coaching life. And it really all, if you think about it, it's just this one big like mesh. Like, it's supposed to intertwine, and so it's really, really healthy and strong when it does.
I really like what you've said about the intertwining. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's such a cool thing, to have those kind of playing off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I like too what you said about having a high standard when you're teaching. I that I often like struggled like in high school with like not really, I don't know, just not believing in myself academically, or like
Mm-hmm.
just like think, I don't know, developed a narrative for myself. I ended up doing much better in college. I don't know what flipped and switched, but like I just connected with that space more. But all that to say, what some things that really helped me in my experience was having teachers who had high standards. Like, it helped to kind of drive
Mm-hmm.
motivation. And you, in some circumstances, you would almost think like it'd be the opposite. If you here's where I want you to be, if you like the first
Mm-hmm.
instance you're not there, then you like feel disappointed. But it like
Yeah.
helps to grow and like pull that
Mm-hmm.
kind of that self-confidence out of kids and
Mm-hmm.
everything like that. I love that. So are there aspects of coaching that didn't come to you as easily as you might have hoped, like when you first started coaching? Tell me about that.
Um, Something that I had to figure out. So last year was my first year being a head coach, and this year's my second year, and I think that it's been a world difference. Um, I think in my first year being a head coach, I felt like I had a lot. I wouldn't say a lot to prove, but I felt like I needed to be very strong-willed because I was really young. And when you're coaching seniors and juniors who just have a 6 year age gap, like, they may look at you as like, oh, you're just our friend, and they may think that they can talk to you a certain way, et cetera. And so I was like, I'm gonna be really strong willed and hard, and like, and I was, and it ended up tearing me down just as much as it may have torn them down in a way. And like, I remember being so angry because I had these high standards, but I wasn't reminding myself of these are kids. These are kids who are trying to meet your standards, and they're not going to all of the time, but that's okay. And I kept thinking, well, why can't they do this for me? Like I'm telling them. Uh, but this year I've kept my standards high. They haven't dropped at all. I've maintained high standards, but I've constantly reminded myself these are kids and they're going to try to reach the standards, but they are kids and they're going to mess up and they don't have that hindsight of being an adult yet and understanding like why this would frustrate me.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that I've done a lot better at is being very consistent. And so last year, and nothing's really changed. I've just been able to remind myself more of their kids and they're going to mess up, but I've been very consistent about like what our policies are. Like if you're late to practice, you're going to run regardless of circumstances. And so like as an example, last year, someone would be late to practice and I'd make them run. And let's say the next day someone came to me and said, I'm so sorry, my alarm didn't go off, and they had a reason. I'd say that's okay because I wanted to seem like I understand it's out of your control. Now
Yeah.
this year, and here's a story for you. This year I had 3 seniors who were late to our practice by 45 minutes. Now the reason they were late is because they were 15 minutes away and their car battery died and they could not get to me. And they got to practice and I said, you're going to run extra. And they were like, but it's out of our control. It's out of our control. But I said, but you're late. You're late to practice and there's a consequence regardless of circumstance. I know it's out of your control, but at the end of the day, you're seniors on this team and you have to run extra.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that's helped me a lot is being consistent regardless of circumstance. Because if you're consistent, everyone's going to understand what your standards are, and that there's no way to get out of them. And that's just kind of how life is. And I told them, I said, you could have a job and your car battery die. And if you're late, like there's a consequence.
Yeah.
And you may not like it, but that's how life is. And so it's finding out new ways to kind of, you have to be strong as a young coach and kind of earn people's respect and show them like you're strong-willed, but you also have to find this balance of not being too strong that like you ruin it for yourself at the same time.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, that's something that I think that if somebody came to me like and they were late to a practice and they're like, I'm so sorry, like we were leaving on time. It's a car
Yep.
battery died and like we're late for this reason, so sorry. But I would have a really tough time like maintaining that consistent, like I understand, I know that that you didn't mean it. It's circumstances
Mm-hmm.
outside of your control. Even still, you're gonna have to run because this is the rule that we have. Like I would have a really hard
It's
time.
hard. And you've like built these relationships. And that's like the hard part too, is being able to be stern and then love on them right after, no matter how upset it makes you as a coach and how frustrated you are. Like you still have to love on them regardless of like the frustration you feel. And that's something that had to work on a lot, because like you make these relationships, you give them a consequence, and they're going to be pissed at you. Like it doesn't matter who you could be, their mom, their dad. If you give them a consequence, they're going to be upset with you. And then I in turn would be like, well, why are you mad at me? Like this is the rules. And you think that, and it's not really that they're so mad at you. They're mad at themselves because they're getting a consequence. And so
Yeah.
it's hard when you have these relationships. You don't want to upset them because you love them. But, in hindsight, I'm hoping in hindsight, they realize like it was all for a purpose and it
Yeah.
helps them in the end.
Oh yeah, that's a tough
It's
one,
tough.
but I think that long term, like the way that I kind of remember and relate to the teachers and the coaches that I had in my life that approached things in that way that were tough, like but consistent across the board, and in the end, like really cared for how I performed as an athlete and cared for like my well being as a person. That yeah, like those I look back on the way that they cared for me and coached me like
Mm-hmm.
fondly.
Yeah.
So I hope that for you. I'm pretty sure that that's how it'll go. But yeah, tough in the moment.
Yeah.
Um, that's hard. That's so hard. Um, so I'd kind of want to know is from a coaching and like teaching perspective, are there resources that you look to for advice, structure, that could be community, anything like
Mhm.
that? Where do you tend to look to when you're trying to get inspired or look for some help, guidance?
So one thing that I did this year is I reached out to my old varsity volleyball coach and we met and we talked about, like when you coached me, you were a young coach and now I'm a young coach. And so she was kind of mentoring me like, this is normal. It is normal to go through this. And she really helped me at the beginning of the season this year. I like to read some sports psychology books. So I don't know if you know who John Gordon is. I I got into John Gordon because of my head basketball coach in college. We had to read a book called The Energy Bus and a book called One Word, and so I started reading those, and that kind of helped fuel me with some inspiration. And sometimes I will watch like some volleyball videos that pertain to skills and drills and how to coach and all those things. And this is the funny one, is that last spring I watched Ted Lasso, all the seasons.
Really?
And
Okay.
it's so funny, but I tell everybody this, that really helped me approach my coaching life. Because if you've never seen it, have you seen it?
I've not seen it, but I've seen like clips like from social media and stuff, and I've
Mm-hmm.
heard people just evangelize about it like, "Oh, it's so good." As a show, it also like makes me feel really good. But from the coaching
Mm-hmm.
perspective, yeah, like so
Yeah.
tell me about Ted Lasso.
So when I watched it, it at like the whole overarching aspect that I took from it is that you are there to make a difference in their life as a person, regardless of how the girls do. If you have a winning record, a losing record, if you're the best or the worst, if you've made an impact and you've loved on those students or those players that you have, and you've made them feel cared for, like you're the winner at the end of the day.
Mhm.
If you've been able to create a culture where the team is a team and they can come together and they can, be there for each other, you've won. And so, and actually, I keep this on my desk. One of our first quotes of the year was to be a goldfish, and that's from Ted Lasso. And so at the very first day of school, I gave every single one of our players a plastic goldfish. And so they keep these either in their book bags or at home or whatever it may be. And I actually keep one on my desk at school, on my desk at home, and then in my car. And so wherever I actually have a bracelet. So I actually gave every single one of our volleyball girls a bracelet that had their initials and their number. And then mine says be a goldfish. So that's like my reminder of, if you make a mistake, it's okay because mistakes happen. Have the goldfish mindset and then move on.
Mhm.
And so I've really like taken Ted Lasso and kind of put it into our team this year of, some of our culture stuff.
Nice. That's a
Yeah.
really cool like source of inspiration, like especially it
Mm-hmm.
being like so recent. Like I think there's a lot of like tried and true so like motivational like sports movies like
Mm-hmm.
Remember the Titans and Miracle on
Yes.
Ice and like
Mm-hmm.
like the ones that you grow up watching and like they've been established for so long, so it's awesome to see like something so recent and new
Mm-hmm.
have such an impact in that way, because I've seen like people reference like Be a Goldfish
Oh my gosh,
before.
watch it.
Yeah,
It is
that's
so good.
I got to check it out. I've heard nothing but good things really
Mm-hmm.
about the entire show. Um, that's awesome. So, have your students or your athletes like intern like gone and watched Ted Lasso because of like your explanation for it?
I don't know. And sometimes I hope that they don't because there is some profanity.
Sure.
And I'm like, I don't want you to go home and watch Ted Lasso and say, Coach Hogan told me to watch this. And then I
Hmm.
get some parent phone
Right.
calls. But I'm hoping that when they get a little older, maybe they watch Ted Lasso because it truly is like from just like somebody who's been in sports. And even if you aren't a sports person, I think it's truly beautiful of like, you watch the team progress and get closer and break down barriers, and that's always special to watch.
Hmm. Yeah, that I've heard not. that's one of the key like fixtures of the show is that like
Mhm.
you're seeing a lot of like individual growth for like the characters, and then and like then also their relationships to each other. I love
Mhm.
like a good arc like that. It's so
Mhm.
such a cool thing. So be a goldfish.
Yep.
We gotta
Exactly. Got to be a goldfish.
keep that. I'm gonna look into Ted Lasso. We don't have Apple TV,
Oh,
but we'll it's might have to make
you
the
might have
trek
to get
for
it
it.
now.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Any other pieces of sports media that you or TV or anything that you work into, like your training sessions or quotes or anything like that?
So, speaking of quotes, I give a quote of the day every single day. And so there is some, and like I said, at the end of the day, if I can help these girls become a better person, like we've won, regardless of what our schedule says. And so we give a quote of the day every day. And something special that we did this season is for the last 13 days of our guaranteed practices. I made every single girl on our varsity team do a quote of the day. And some of them were like awesome. Uh, and and I also did it because I wanted to show them like we're on this together. Every single one of us is putting a foot in, and we're being a little more vulnerable. We're picking a quote and we're having to explain why we choose this and why it's important to us and how it pertains to our team. And so I'm a big quote person. Like I think my girls probably think it's so corny, but I come in there, quote of the day is in a different color of expo marker, and that's the very first thing that we start off with. And you know, they probably get tired of me talking, but I love a good quote.
Tough. No, it's I think quotes and like their ability to kind of encapsulate maybe a more complex like idea and really like simplify it down or distill
Mhm.
it into like a greater like experience. Like be a goldfish like
Yep.
is you know, it's a really good thing for an athlete to do. Like, hey, you're gonna mess up, like forget about it and move on and like
Exactly.
play every, you know, every situation like it's 0-0, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I love that. um any uh, I like a lot what you implemented too with getting your seniors to present like their quotes. Um,
Mhm.
like you talked about like players like being like vulnerable and it like might be a little tough. Like what was that like? Like how did the team respond to it? Were there people who like pushed back um or people who like responded really well or like surprised you?
So I had no pushback, and if there was pushback, I didn't hear about it, which I love.
Hmm.
But I feel like everybody took this very, very seriously. They like had some care into it, and so you know I expected them truly to pick a quote, go up there, and just kind of wing it. But I had girls come in and they had their quote and they had a piece of paper that they had written and they had put thought into what they wanted to
That's
say,
awesome.
which I loved. I was like it kind of took me back. I was like, I didn't expect y'all to like really truly like put your time and effort into this, um, you know, because they're kids and they have their lives, and sometimes a quote of the day is like the very last thing on their mind. But you know, I hoped it showed me at least, and hopefully it showed everybody like we all are putting a lot of care into this, and as to why we're choosing what we're choosing. And so, and one of my favorite things is like I would always start off and be like, and our quote of the day is, and give everybody like a little announcement. Everybody was clapping and cheering, and then once the quote was finished and they had done talking, everyone's cheering again. And so I think everybody really, really enjoyed it.
No, that's really cool. I
Mm-hmm.
that would be a really cool experience to like have because you mentioned like there's like
Mm-hmm.
that optional component. It's like an extra thing for them, like for them
Yep.
to like really dive into it and take it seriously and like present, you know, like a part of themselves and like why they felt something was important. That's got to be
Mm-hmm.
a cool thing.
And some of them had like, so the deal was that I had to approve the quote before they did it. So some of them had like their notes app and they'd be like, Coach Hogan, I don't know what to choose. And it was like 30 quotes. Like
Oh
they
my goodness.
were like looking up quotes and looking and looking and looking for the very best one. So they were definitely like full in for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love that. So that's really that's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. And I'm sure that those players are gonna remember that for if they go into coaching, maybe that's something that they'll implement and,
Mm-hmm.
continue that on. Um, so well, my next question was, what impact have you seen yourself making? I think that we've kind of addressed that. So I'm gonna move on. Well, actually, no. Let's not skip over a question. What impact have you um, seen yourself making? We've kind of highlighted that instance with the quote and people coming out of their shell and sharing things that are important to them. But what impact have you seen yourself making? You can go coaching and teaching. I think that those are good routes to go.
For coaching, I think that, if I'm hopefully, every coach is making an impact, and I would love for my impact to be instilling these kids with confidence. And something too with coaching young girls is we've had a lot of conversations of like, you are worth something, and you are beautifully and wonderfully made, and you're here for a purpose. And you need to make sure that you're filling yourself up every single day with something good so that you can fill into other people's cups. And so a lot of it is reminding them that you have to take care of yourself before you can ever take care of somebody else. And like, whether that's helping a teammate, being in a relationship, being a really good daughter, a really good student, like, you have to be filling yourself up every single day. And so if I can make sure that they're doing that, I've won at the end of the day. And then with my students, the impact that I'm hoping is that I'm showing them that like I care about that, like I have these high standards, and like I would say that I'm a pretty tough teacher, and I have high standards. So like, I'm gonna love on you. I'm gonna help you every single step of the way as much as I can. But you're going to reach these standards. Like, I'm not lowering them for you. Like, I have these for a reason, and I'm gonna get you there. And so, I hope that they can see that like they're worth more, and they can reach more than they think that they can, through me pushing them and helping them along the way.
Love that. That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. Like seeing the way that you light up about talking about that is
Mm-hmm.
a really like profound thing. Like I love hearing like just how passionate about you are about those things, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
a little bit less important to you, like
Yeah.
the results of the team. But like, I mean, obviously that's a
Yeah.
good byproduct if you're
Yeah, it is.
if you're producing that. But I think like
Mm-hmm.
the the fact that you're achieving that by the means of and by way of like cultivating some really like strong connections to those students, that's such an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that my daughters one day, they get a coach like you who really cares
Oh, thank
about
you.
that's their experience and everything like that. It's that, I think it's everything that like a parent could hope for. So
Yeah.
that's really awesome. um so having a long-standing relationship with basketball and volleyball,
Mm-hmm.
how does that impact the way that you spectate other sports? And I guess one way to look at it too is, how has coaching impact the way that you spectate other sports? Like, it could be like your own sports,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's maybe like sports that you have nothing to do with. So I'd want to hear a little bit about that. Does that change things?
So when I watch other sports, and so when I watch basketball, like, full on, I'm trying to enjoy it. Like, I'm trying to be a fan and just watch. And sometimes I have to make sure I'm not watching the technical stuff, like certain ways that you guard screens, how you're guarding that specific ball handler. Are you closing out this way? Like, I try to just like take it all in and just like enjoy it. And then with volleyball, when I'm watching, I feel like I'm looking at it like as a coach, like, how can I learn from this right now?
Mhm.
And so, and I'm also enjoying it at the same time, but like, um, when we've been at regionals, and today I was watching some of regionals, I'm like watching how they set up their defense. How are you going to set up for this attack? What do your timeouts look like? What does your pregame look like? Like, I'm trying to learn as much as I possibly can so that it in turns make me a better coach. Um, and then when I watch other teams, I will watch how their coach reacts. or if anyone talks about a coach, like I usually like tune out because I'm like, as a head coach now, like I completely understand sometimes how these coaches feel. And so, and unless you're like in that, you'll never really understand. And so like when you see these coaches like flip out, I'm like, I
I
sometimes
get it.
understand like why you want to flip out right now. And
Oh my
so
gosh. Yeah.
so I look at it in a lot of different ways, and it kind of depends on the sport that I'm watching. But when I watch volleyball, like I'm trying to learn as well as enjoy it at the same time.
That's good. What about a sport that you didn't grow up playing or have like as deep a connection to? And do you look at those a certain like a different way because of coaching?
So an example, I would just say like tennis. I know nothing about tennis, and I just enjoy it. I'm like, that was great. I have no idea what just happened besides they couldn't return the tennis ball and they got the point, and this is super
Nice.
exciting. And so, sometimes the ones that I don't understand, like I just watch and enjoy, and I love. There's a tennis player right now, and it's a young man. I can't remember his name, but I love how fiery he is and how
Hmm.
passionate he is. And so, if I'm watching in a coaching aspect, I'm like, I love his energy. Like I want my girls to have that energy. And so, the ones I don't understand, I'm probably just enjoying.
Nice. That's good.
Yeah.
Uh, that's cool. Um, well, so switching gears for a quick moment here.
Hmm.
Um, obviously, teaching is another component to what you do, but why anatomy and physiology? Like, why did you first connect with that? Like, why was
Hmm.
that the route that you went?
So I actually got really, really lucky. So I've loved science, and I think I get that from my mom because she was really into physical science and chemistry and all that. But what really made me love anatomy and physiology was Miss Walston at Vestavia. That was a
Yep.
class that I would come into, and like I was so ready to learn, and I was so fascinated, and I would go home and tell my parents everything I learned, like regardless of how disgusting or nasty or like not dinner table conversation it was, like I was wanting to talk about it all the time. And so when I was deciding that I wanted to be a teacher, I was like, I want to do science and I would love to teach anatomy and physiology. But that's typically, it has like that seniority among teachers where if you've been there the longest, you typically get that anatomy class because you're seniors. It's a fun class to teach, and the new teachers typically get biology. You get the freshmen. And so when I got the job at Mortimer Jordan, nobody wanted the anatomy physiology position. And like I was super in love with it. So it was a perfect match. And I'm super, super lucky to have it. And it's so cool because I tell my kids, I'm like, you're learning about things that are happening right now in your body. I don't know if they find it as fascinating as I do, but I'm
Mhm.
hoping that by the end they'll be like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, 100%. And it doesn't hurt from like the athlete perspective too, like knowing
Mhm.
how these systems are like playing like with each other, and you're
Mhm.
like, like this, like your muscles contracting right now and
Yep.
it's doing it all the time. Like that's
I
really
know. I'm like, you're
that's really
writing notes and this is happening right now while you write these notes, and they just look at me like, okay, whatever.
okay.
But
Yeah, it's that's
I
good.
had
No,
someone, at least like one person in each class is like, oh, this is really cool, and I'm just
that
like,
is cool.
yes.
Yes. And so I also kind of like remember in high school, like I had Miss Pressler for kind of
Mhm.
both anatomy classes. Like there was like the freshman
Mhm.
anatomy and then like the senior like anatomy and physiology. And so loved her and like
Mhm.
loved that class. I just kind of like connected with it, like doing the homework for it, like felt easier, like paying
Mhm.
attention in class felt easier. Because I just like really, I don't know, I liked it. Like I didn't,
It's so
I,
much fun. The
yeah,
best science.
it's a, it's so cool. So okay, is there like if you were to distill down your like enjoyment of the subject into like
Mhm.
one physical phenomenon, like one body process, or
Okay.
like if you had to try and convert somebody into an anatomy and physiology like lover, what like physical process, phenomenon, like body kind of like
Mhm.
something would you like describe to like bring them over to the dark side?
Okay. I think I would have to choose between two.
Okay.
Number one is how your muscles contract. And so we look at the neuromuscular junction and cross bridge cycling, which I think is like so, so cool. And then we do how gas exchange works. And so like we will trace on paper, we'll draw it and sketch it about how oxygen will diffuse from the alveoli into your pulmonary capillaries, and then it travels all the way through your body, and then it will go to systemic capillaries, drop off oxygen, and then like there's so much more to it. And I don't want to like get all nerdy, but like those two I feel like are so cool because like as we're talking about it, I'm like, you're doing this right now. Like
Mm-hmm.
the smallest components of your body are doing this and keeping you going. And those are two that really everyone's like this is really
Yeah.
cool. And so I would have to pick those two.
No, I especially kind of like connect with the um like the pulmonary one too because of
Mhm.
the surface area that's like collapsed and like folded like into like your
Yes.
lungs, and like that's like where the gas so it's
Mhm.
I like that's
I always
so
give
like
fun
crazy to
facts
me.
for stuff like for respiratory system. If you took all of your respiratory organs and laid them out, I'm pretty sure it takes up either half a tennis court or a full tennis court.
Wild.
And then for cardiovascular system, I always tell them that if you took every, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is right. If you took every single like blood vessel and stretched them out, it would wrap around the world twice.
That's so insane. Like I just
Yeah, and then I tell them that their digestive tract is 30 feet long, and they're like, "What do you mean 30 feet long?" Yeah,
where like I'm
exactly.
all
They like all look down at their stomach and they're like holding it, and they're like, "What?" I'm like,
yeah. The
"Yeah."
the the compactness for, like,
Mhm.
all of the surface area exchanges and, like, the pathways for
Mhm.
everything, that's, like, so nutty to me,
Yeah, it
and,
is.
like, seeing it it's like and, everything about, like, movement and, like, language and stuff, like, it's so intuitive to us now that it can be, like, lost really easily.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Um, well, what is in the future for you? And that could be as a teacher, as a coach. It's kind of the ways that we've been splitting up some of these questions. But
Mhm.
is there any kind of like route that you see yourself going? What does that look like?
So for now, the route is stay teaching, stay coaching. Sometimes there are some days where I'm like, I can never be a coach anymore. Like, it truly is a lot, but once you have time to reflect and take your break, you're like, no, this is like what I'm supposed to be doing. And so, teaching and coaching, that's what I foresee in the future. But I always have this joke with my friends that whenever it's time, we will move to the coast and create a coffee shop, and it's going to be called Bean Bums for beach bums. And we will just sell coffee and watch people surf all day, and it'll be great and so relaxing.
Nice,
So,
love it.
one or the other.
That's a very very cool. I was trying to see if you were going to be like, oh yeah, athletic director or like
Oh,
it's a vice principal, anything like that. No, it's a
so, my mom always asks me if I want to go into administration. So, my mom is the principal at Hoover High School now.
mhm.
And so she's always like, "Do you want to be an administrator?" And I'm like, "No, no,
Oh.
I do not. Not at
No shot.
all. Not that stressed. No, thank you."
Mhm. That's funny. I've got a couple, like, administrators, like, in my life and, like, so a friend who is a high school soccer coach and, like, a goalkeeper
Mhm.
coach, for our alma mater, um,
Okay.
and, it's so funny to hear about how, like, some of his, like, long-term plans. He's like, "Yeah, I wanna do this and, like, coaching. Like, I think I could be, like, a good AD and
Mhm.
stuff," and I'm like so, like, that is, like, a little bit why I, like, wanted to ask you
Mhm.
is, like, hearing, like, some other, like, coaches in my life, like, talking about
Yeah.
that experience, and it's funny to hear too, your mom being in administration and her, like, kinda
Mhm.
bugging
I
you about
know.
it.
I'm like,
Do you
"Girl."
think that you'll, like, get to a point where you fold and you're like, "Alright, well, maybe I will, let's, go this way."
Honestly, I could see it.
Yeah.
I could see it. I could see me folding and following in her footsteps and being an AP. I don't know about principal, but maybe an AP like way down the line.
Mhm.
But for now, I don't even want to think about all the stress that she has to deal with.
Yeah, 100%. That's funny. Um Well, so we've kind of wrapped up our questions on your story, but
Hmm.
what we've started doing, and I forget how many episodes we've been doing this now, probably 3 or 4.
Hmm.
But what I've been doing is extending the opportunity to each of the guests to ask a question to the next guest. So, guest from the previous episode was Caroline Taylor, and she wanted to ask this: is what is your most controversial take that you have?
Oh my gosh.
She said it's she loves finding like a good like icebreaker question, and it's one that she resorts to a lot. So what's a controversial take that you have?
Oh my gosh. I hate being controversial. This might be a terrible question for me. Controversial take. Um,
I'll tell you one right now is that
okay,
I think that hot desserts are not as good as cold desserts. Like just like even
that's a good one.
like I know people go crazy for like a cobbler, but like what makes
Hmm.
it better? Ice cream on top. So like what's really
That's a
uh,
good one.
what's the what who's really the winner there? But yeah, so
I don't know if this is controversial, but this goes off like the hot and cold. I think cold pizza is 1,000 times better than hot pizza. Always. It
you're
always wins.
you're not
And thick
alone.
crust. Always better than thick crust.
It's a
That's my take.
you're not alone. We're one and the same
Good.
when it comes to pizza takes. I for me, honestly, it's like cold pizza, like fresh hot pizza,
Mhm.
and then like reheated pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reheated, the worst.
Yeah. Now in the air fryer, it's
Oh, I've
like
never tried that.
okay, so you gotta redo it in the air fryer. Much better experience, I would say. If you do it in the
Okay.
microwave, don't even bother. So you can do it in the oven.
Mhm.
It's kind of whatever. It's a air fryer, crucial.
Okay, air fryer. I'll have to think of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what if? Thanks for letting us know, and thank you for Caroline for that question. But what's a question that you'd want to ask to the next guest, and I'll extend that to them whenever they come on.
My question would be if you could give your best piece of advice to yourself in high school, what would it be?
Nice. Love that. Typing that down. I'm excited to ask. I have an idea of who the next guest will be, but I won't spoil
Okay.
it here now. But yeah, so I will make sure to ask them. So thank you
Awesome.
for sharing that. Well, that is going to conclude our time, Caitlin. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit and talk with us. It's been so great to talk with you about anything and everything. With that, any last pieces of anything you want to say before we go?
Gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to check out the playlist, and keep
Yes.
up with who's been on the podcast and how it's going. But that's all I've got. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that is going to conclude this episode of When I Was Your Age, episode 16. That's which is crazy to think about. If you've made it this far, um, why don't you to throw us a pizza emoji on the Instagram in the comments somewhere to let us know that you made it this far. But thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.